Call of Duty Modern Warfare is right around the corner, and we're here to talk about everything new with it. So consider this video just a quick refresher on what's new with the game. Get caught up, especially if you haven't really been paying attention. It's fine, we got you. Let's get started off with number 10 and talk about Gunplay. While there have been a lot of new things and changes added to Call of Duty, this year, one of the biggest changes is actually being made to the gunplay itself. It's not that big, but seeing that the gunplay is the main gameplay loop, it is one of the changes that you're going to notice more often, especially if you're hardcore. There's little adjustments in movement speed and sprint speed, but there's other little things like being able to push a door open slowly, just enough to toss a flashbang inside or something like that. You're also able to mount your weapon on almost any surface, both horizontally and vertically, so you'll be able to lean in a door frame or lean on the top of a barrel or whatever just to get more stability and knock the recoil down a little bit. Now, along with mounting, you can also reload your weapon while in ADS, so that can be pretty useful if you have an enemy in your sights and you don't want to, necessarily lose them. Like I said, all of this stuff might seem pretty small, but seeing that Call of Duty is you running around shooting dudes, I think you're going to really feel these smaller changes. Now, next at number 9, we have some changes being made to how some of the multiplayer maps are designed. Now, we don't have too much info to go off here, but some quick Twitter interactions between some fans and the game's narrative director, Taylor Kurosaki. Now, the majority of Call of Duty maps have a 3-lane design, which leads them to feeling pretty similar. A fan tweeted at Taylor Kurosaki about how they hope all the maps don't follow the simple 3-lane design, and Taylor tweeted back saying that they aren't. So he also responded to another fan saying that not every map ditches the 3-lane design, so there should be a good mix of new and familiar feeling maps. Now, those who play the beta or watched a lot of the 2v2 gunfight mode know that those maps seem to be designed specifically for that mode as well. And there have been leaks and rumors suggesting that the game will launch with 10 maps with the full list available, and then another 7 tailored to the gunfight mode. Now, there has been some speculation about which classic maps might make a return, but we have no concrete info. Now, one of the high-profile leakers out there who has gotten things right in the past suggests that those will be available after launch. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. At the time of making this video, that's what we know. Next, over at number 8, weapons have more or less felt the same-ish in Call of Duty for quite some time. It's 1-to-1. You aim, you push the button, and almost instantly the shot is registered and your enemy takes damage. Now, in Modern Warfare, it will feel like classic Call of Duty for the most part. One of the devs went on record saying that close range and mid-range, the weapons should feel the same, like where you pull the trigger and boom, the bullet hits whatever you're pointing. But if you're shooting from a further distance, then you're going to have to put some thought into it and lead your shots a bit, depending on the weapon, of course. I'm all for changing things up here, and I like the added ballistic science, and I think that it's the smart way of doing it. Leaving everything essentially the same, but making a small tweak to range shooting. It's a nice way to be eased into it, I think, but, what do we know? We do know that Infinity Ward has invested a lot of time and money on weapon ballistics this time after our behind-the-scenes hands-on with the game that we've talked about in the past, and there is some really impressive directional and situational sound work going on with the gunfire. Firing a weapon in a building sounds very different from firing in a street, but not only that, it also sounds different when, say, a gun is fired down a packed city street and then fired down a long, narrow, empty street. So shell casings falling on the ground, too, will also sound different depending on what surface they're landing on and where they're landing. And in your headphones, you'll be able to hear the directional difference. Really, Infinity Ward compared their sound technology similar to graphical lighting technology and a little bit of ray tracing and how sound actually fills in and fills out and bounces around the environment. Now, will that make a difference? Who knows? But we just really like talking about this tech stuff. Coming in at number 7, we have weapon customization, which has been pretty drastically overhauled, and by that I mean it's really fleshed out. You'll be doing all of your weapon customization using the gunsmith system. Now here you'll be able to look through each gun's attachments, with each one having 60 attachments to choose from, roughly. Each attachment also has a very easy to read list of pros and cons. There are some mods that make drastic changes, like an extended mag or a drum mag, but there are other smaller ones that, when stacked up with other ones, really make a difference. So if you prefer movement speed over recoil, there's even an option to have a mag that will use a lower caliber ammunition so you can up your rate of fire and have better control, but at the expense of your damage. So with how in-depth the gun customization works, you can really fine-tune how your weapon works for you, which is something that you can't say about a lot of games, but here, it seems like they're really gonna mean it. Next at number 6, we're going to talk about crossplay. Yes, that's right. Modern Warfare, if you don't know, will support crossplay. Cool, right? Infinity Ward is implementing it in a pretty smart way, though. The matchmaking is all input-based, so if you're playing on a mouse and keyboard, you'll be matched up with other players using mouse and keyboard. The same goes for playing using a controller, while also being able to opt into playing against mouse and keyboard players if you're crazy. You also won't be able to switch input methods mid-match, which is good, so no cheating. Now, crossplay is great, but the freedom of choice as to how you matchmake, I think, makes it all the better. And really, the whole idea of crossplay is just cool, man. Like, we love seeing crossplay pop up in more and more games, and it's cool to see something as big and as mainstream as Call of Duty jumping on that train. Now, moving on to number 5, we all know that Modern Warfare is going to have post-launch content, of course, because every Call of Duty game does, but this time around things are a little bit different. Modern Warfare is going to be a Call of Duty game that does not have a paid season pass, thank God. Instead, new maps and stuff will be released for free. Now, of course, now that they're losing out on that extra $50 or so season pass money, and Activision being involved, it's safe to assume that they're going to be making that up with microtransactions, which we don't have any solid details on besides some players who got into the beta finding something that led us to believe that the game will have some sort of loot boxes. Now, in the past, there has been word that there will be no, unique weapons in loot boxes, but, other people are suggesting that that is not going to be the case. We'll judge how bad these things are when we get our hands on the game at launch, don't you worry. Moving on from that, though, there is some pretty good news in terms of how much post-launch stuff to expect. During an Activision conference call for their quarterly financial report in August, Modern Warfare roadmaps were discussed. We didn't get any details as to exactly what we're getting, but they did say that Modern Warfare has the, and I quote, largest post-launch content pipeline in their history. I mean, that sounds like good news to me. A game being supported for a long time is always a good thing in my book, especially if the gameplay bones support it. And if it's consistently good stuff, we'll be down for it. Next at number 4, let's talk about gameplay flow a bit more. Now, according to experts, because we're not quite, Modern Warfare is said to have a lower time to kill, or TTK, meaning how quickly you'll get blown away by a gun, basically. Early estimates after the beta have been at characters having 100 points of health compared to the 150 points in Black Ops 4. This could be tweaked with updates though, so pay attention to updates if you do care. The scoring system is also back to being the traditional KD ratio or kill-death ratio style, not the other point system from most recently Black Ops 4. Kill streaks are in still, as you probably know, but the mini-map has seen some tweaking. At first it was out entirely, replaced with this compass up top during the betas, but Infinity Ward has compromised and given a partial mini-map in the beta after some backlash. I like the change personally, and the fear of the unknown, and the new minimap is still vague, but this stuff is another thing that just can kind of change and evolve over time with updates. We're gonna have to wait and see. It's also worth pointing out that automatic healing or regenerating health is back. Credit to Black Ops 4 for trying to change it up. I mean, in that game, a healing item was mapped to one of the triggers, and essentially, healing yourself after a firefight had to become as compulsive as mashing the reload button. But now, it's back to normal. I guess it was an experiment with gameplay flow that people weren't happy with? I don't know. But it's just a couple little details we want to point out on the multiplayer side because we know some people really like to obsess over this stuff. But over at number 3, talking about things we're obsessing over, let's talk graphics. First things first, the game is built on a completely new engine. Gameplay and graphics are rebuilt and the game brings the expected high frame rate stuff, but also 4K, HDR, and ray tracing, of course, depending on what console or PC you're playing on. Now, ray tracing has been the big PC feature that's been touted, highlighted by Nvidia as a big advertising thing, and you can see for yourself here how it's gonna look. With the new engine, from what we've seen, there was a massive focus on photogrammetry, which is, in layman's terms, stop me if you've heard us explain this already, doing ultra high quality photo scans of real world stuff and then putting it in games. It has been done before, it looks good, and the new Call of Duty is really doubling down on it here. The developers said they traveled the world scanning objects from guns to materials like cloth to entire buildings and stuff, as well as getting as detailed as scanning burned out cars from wildfires for realism or whatever. There's also a big emphasis on spectral rendering and real-time heat radiation and infrared at all times, just kind of meaning that the game seems completely built around the dark scenes being completely and actually convincingly dark, and night vision being actually required in some spots. Now, people always say that Call of Duty doesn't really change, but the visual and engine changes here seem to be a pretty big difference. Now at number 2, onto the multiplayer itself. You're still gonna have your standard game modes that you've come to expect: domination, deathmatch, Stuff like that is still there for you to enjoy in various iterations, along with 6v6, 10v10, 20 versus 20 variations, and with full matchmaking options you'd expect. Now, the game will feature the heavily featured 2v2 gunfight mode. If you've missed the reveal or just need a refresher, Gunfight will throw two-player teams against each other with randomized loadouts on small maps optimized just for these close quarter encounters that we mentioned earlier, and you'll have to take out your opponents in 40 seconds or the rules will change on the fly. Then there's also Ground War, the larger scale conflicts that look pretty damn chaotic and exciting. But also, I'm happy to say that Spec Ops makes a glorious return. One of the Modern Warfare series' most beloved content offerings. I mean, all progression between all these modes carry over, and this one is a great mode that gives you a bit more fun, cooperative stuff. Spec Ops has a variety of different mode offerings within it to play through, challenging missions, and a bunch of different strategies, required or optional. The only bummer is that one of these branches of the mode, Survival, is exclusive to PS4. Now, that mode might suck. It might not be much to write home about. We don't really know yet, but it still sucks that a mode is hidden behind console exclusivity. But then there's also Realism mode, which is slower paced, higher stakes, and players are required to use night vision goggles to see anything. Aiming down sights is limited because you have your night vision goggles on, and the HUD is pretty much eliminated, and we can confirm that this mode is freaking great. Call of Duty has done stuff like this before, other first-person shooters have, but we think this mode is so much fun, and it's definitely the one to look out for. But one other thing to look out for at number 1 is the campaign. This, to us here at gameranx, is one of the best and biggest differences from Black Ops 4. A new single-player campaign in Modern Warfare 2019 is now technically a new feature. So if you didn't know, Modern Warfare is going to feature a full campaign once again. It's apparently intended to be a bit of a soft reboot of the Modern Warfare run, seeing as so much crazy shit went down in those games. This is a new, more realistic universe that's inhabited by updated versions of the characters you know and love. Most importantly, of course, Captain Price. The campaign is a globe-trotting affair with multiple playable characters, including a terrorist attack in the center of London's Piccadilly Square, and then you are Metro Police Sergeant Kyle Garrick, then as Alex, a CIA officer, and then there's also a plotline centering around Farah leading some rebel fighters somewhere in the Middle East. There's a lot going on, and it seems like a pretty global adventure. From what we've also seen, it does seem to go edgy and violent, with lots of scenes evoking memories of No Russian from Modern Warfare 2, and they're just going all in on this, and we're excited to see what comes of it. Now, they haven't really shown off all their cards at the campaign, and frankly, we're okay with that. We like some surprises, but we'll know soon enough because the game launches on October 25th. But those are all of the new things in Call of Duty Modern Warfare we think you need to know. Maybe if you've not really been keeping up, now you're filled in, now you're officially briefed. That's the new stuff. So we want to hear from you guys down in the comments. What are you thinking? Are you excited or not? Is this going to be the Call of Duty that brings you back? Do you play everyone? Do you hate everyone? Let's talk. If you learned something, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. We really appreciate that. And of course, if you're new, it's worth considering subscribing and hitting that notification bell because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.